Hi, welcome back to Common Knowledge, the show where I take a look at 10 common Magic the Gathering cards and tell you are they any good in the Pauper format or not. Before we get started, I did want to mention I got a kind of comment recently on one of these episodes, and I thought it was interesting, and I wanted to just bring it up. Not going to say who it's from, but they said, and I'll put this up on screen here. I can see these videos pop off if this series was more organized, maybe by set. It's tough to want to sift through these. It's almost as painful as having to sift through bulk. And first of all, I think that's very funny. So good comment, but that is good feedback. Couple things though. One, I like sifting through bulk. it's kind of one of my favorite things to do, and I am totally fine if this series does feel like sifting through bulk, because that's part of the fun of it. That when you are sifting through bulk, it's really cool to just pick out a card and go, whoa, that card's actually really good. Why is it in this bulk bin? And I hope this series can kind of be that for you, but mostly for me, because I just like doing it. And I think the spontaneity, the randomness of it is the fun part for me. So that's what I like doing with this series. Now, if you do want something that is a little bit more focused, done by set, as that commenter mentioned, well, good news. I do that too. I've got a couple other videos. They do take longer to produce because they are full set reviews of Pauper, of new Magic the Gathering sets, but I'm only looking at the common cards. I've done it for Secrets of Strixhaven most recently, so go check out that one if you'd like to. That's a very long video. So what I've also done is then started making the most interesting cards from each, or the most interesting Pauper cards from each set. I also did that for Secrets of Strixhaven if you want something that's a little bit more focused that way. And then a video that I just put out pretty recently that I really like is me going back to an old set, and in this case, a bad set of Portal 3 Kingdoms, even though it's a set I very much love. And I went through and talked about a couple of the potentially Pauper viable, and even some cards that do see Pauper play from that set that you might not expect. So if you do want something a little bit more focused, I have all of those options available to you. And then I have much better produced videos that I don't know if I'm ever going to take the effort to try to do again, because it did just take forever to make. But it was kind of fun when I mentioned the cards. Was it 10? I don't remember if it was 10 or not, but it was a bunch of cards that I thought could be downshifted from uncommon to common. And that's a video that I really like. So go check that one out if you haven't seen it before. And if you do want me to make more of those, I guess leave a comment and also tell me a card that you think should be downshifted to common, and I'll take it under advisement, and we'll see if one of those other videos get made. I did put just recently, a couple days ago, I said like, oh, if I ever do another downshift video, here's a perfect one that I didn't mention before. So who knows? Maybe that video is somewhere on the horizon. All right, enough of that. Let's get to sifting through some bulk on the internet. Let's start with our first card of the day. It is Blood Rock Cyclops, 2 and a red for a 3/3 Cyclops. This creature attacks each combat if able. That is not very good. I mean, it's on rate, 3 mana, 3/3, but outside of that, not great. And we can do better than just a card that is on rate, especially when it has somewhat of a drawback here of being forced to attack each combat if able. Now, you have ways of stopping that if you need to. You can tap things down for, vehicles, or for, well, not in Pauper, but the planets and things like that. There are ways of tapping down creatures if you didn't want them to attack that turn. But this is not, like, the card itself is not good enough to justify finding ways to tap this creature down when you don't want to attack. Red is just so much faster than this card could ever be, and so much stronger than this card could ever be. So, in terms of a score, I guess with the downside, it can get down into 1 territory. I'll give it a 1.8. And we'll see what our next card is. Kitsune Riftwalker, a Champions of Kamigawa card, so I'm going to like it. I don't know if I can like this one though. 1 double white for a 2/1 Fox Wizard with protection from spirits and from arcane. Ooh, this was kind of decent in Kamigawa when it first came out, because that is a whole set, especially in something like limited, because that is a whole set that is like half the set are spirits, the Kami from Kamigawa, and also not all of the instants and sorceries were arcane spells, but a lot of them were. So this creature stops all that stuff, which is great. Pauper doesn't have hardly any arcane spells that get used. There are some. There's a couple that can see some use. Some that saw some use that just got did not get banned out of the format, but the high tide that was enabling them got banned out of the format again. So some of those arcane spells don't really see much in the way of play. But there are some spirits that you'll find. I can't think of any spirits off the top of my head. Oh, actually, you know what? The spirit mascot from Secrets of Strixhaven. That's seen some Pauper play right now in some Jeskai lists, or even just some Boros lists. I'm sorry, Lorehold lists. I guess we should say on theme for that. I don't think that card is so good that it needs some kind of hard counter like Kitsune Riftwalker. But I guess if for some reason that card started absolutely dominating Pauper, this is a way of getting around it or stopping it, just blocking it. Not great though. Not great though. I'm gonna give this thing. I'm going to give it a 2, and it really doesn't deserve it. But it is Kamigawa, and I do want to give it some points just for that. It's not particularly great. Salvage Drone, single blue mana for a 1/1 Eldrazi drone with Devoid, meaning it has no color. Even though you paid a blue, it doesn't matter, it's colorless. And it also has Ingest. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles the top card of their library. And when this creature dies, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. That's not terrible. It's fine. The Ingest is almost never really that relevant. I suppose you could potentially exile some important combo piece or a Tolarian Terror off the opponent's deck, and then they have lost that card. Okay, sure. But for the most part, this is a 1-mana 1/1. The Devoid doesn't really matter all that much here. There's, I guess, potential occasions where it might show up, but when you're just dealing with a 1-mana 1/1 creature, it's probably not a huge deal that it has no color. And then finally here, this die trigger is okay. You know, you loot when it dies, so you do get a little bit of value on it, even if you just keep swinging away, or as a blocker, that's okay too, just to block something and be able to get that card selection, not card advantage, but card selection. And that's not terrible. But when you think about all the other cards that you can get for a single blue mana, you probably end up playing those instead of the Salvage Drone here. You know, Fairies has all sorts of 1-mana guys, the Fairy Seer, the Fairy Miscreant, not exactly the Moon Circuit Hacker, but you usually are only paying a single blue mana to get that on the board. And then you have things like the Humbling Elder, and there's another card that's basically just like a Humbling Elder, and those can come down for a single blue mana at flash speed. There's the Ilvoy Galeblade that's also played in Fairies. I at least played in my Fairies deck. That's a 1-mana 1/1 that flies and has flash. So there's just enough other cards that I don't think Salvage Drone really hangs with some of those other things. Network Operator, is that what it's called? From Kamigawa Neon Dynasty? Nope. Network Disruptor, that's what it's called. Network Disruptor. That's my card right there. So another 1/1 flyer, and when it comes into the battlefield, you can tap a permanent. And I think all of those just tend to end up being better than Salvage Drone. The loot's fine, but at the same time, if you really want that effect, maybe just pay an extra mana and get the Outlaw Medic, which just draws you an entire card when it dies. You don't even have to discard one. Or you play Modern Age, and that can draw and discard a couple of times before it becomes a 2/3 flyer. So there's lots of things that I think you end up playing before Salvage Drone. It's fine, but it's not gonna hang. Let's go ahead and give this thing a 2.4. That's maybe a little high. Anyway, Rampaging Classmate, 2 and a red for a 3/2 Lizard Berserker. Whenever this creature attacks, it gets +1/+0 until the end of turn for each other attacking creature. That's kind of cool. You don't mind that. I think, so this is from Spider-Man, so we did talk about this at one point when I did a set review for Spider-Man. I didn't know if we did it for the episode, because this card looks familiar, but I think it was just for that other thing that we talked about, which I believe I also gave out ratings for, so I have rated this card at some point. Let's rate it for this show, though. This is okay. 3 mana for a 3/2. You don't love that, especially when it doesn't have haste. It doesn't have any form of evasion at all. No trample, no anything like that. But red decks can go pretty wide. There are some red decks that can go pretty wide. You know, the Goblins ones that we've seen in the past. We're seeing much more mono red burn these days, or the Madness decks that are basically burn, that have a few creatures that get played, but those creatures aren't really for swinging in. They're for, creating a bunch of damage. The Kessig Flame Breathers, the Gutter Snipes, things like that. You do have the Voldaren Epicures, which I guess those can swing in, but again, you're putting those in the decks because they do a single damage when they come into play, and they give you that blood token, so you can discard your Sneaky Snacker or another one of your Madness cards or something like that. So this card probably doesn't really have much of a home. I guess you could do maybe a Boros that's kind of like a white weenie deck, but splashes enough red for Rampaging Classmate. Is that worth it? I'm not sure it is. You give your opponent an entire turn to figure out what to do about this guy, and then once you do get to attack with him, he's still pretty squishy, only getting a power boost, no toughness boosts. So you'd have to find some way of giving him trample or first strike or something. And at that point, especially if you're already playing white, you could probably just play Leonardo, Big Brother, and get a lot more value than this. And hey, if you're playing a card, if you're thinking about playing a card like this, you've already dipped your toe into Universes Beyond. Just play the better Universes Beyond card at that point. Still, I think he's interesting, more interesting than 80% of the cards we see on this show. So I'm going to give him a halfway decent score, and I will give him a 3.1. Next is Disfigure. This isn't too bad. Single black mana for an instant. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. That's fine. In fact, is that the same as Stab, or is that different than Stab? Trying to remember. Where I meant Stab. Yeah, target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. So it's just another Stab. You could play 8 Stabs in your deck if you wanted to. So it's really just down to personal preference. Do you prefer Stab or Disfigure? It's fine. It is nice that it can stop potentially indestructible creatures. If the Kenku Artificer turns one of your bridges into a land, this can kind of deal with it. Although Kenku puts 3 +1/+1 counters, so the -2/-2 isn't quite enough. So that's not even going to really help you. There's probably a couple things, if you Earthbend, there's the Dai Li Indoctrination. That's an Earthbend too, right? I should know that. I run that in a deck that does animate bridges. Yeah, that Earthbends too. So that can turn one of your indestructible bridges into a 2/2 creature, and this card can stop that. But that's maybe asking a little too much. I think at that point, you probably just want to find the extra mana and play Cast Down, or go for the Throat and be able to take out lots of different kinds of threats instead of just, anything with 2 toughness. It could be used more as a combat trick if you wanted to, and not just a removal spell. A way of bringing their Cryptic Serpent or Gurmag Angler down to a more reasonable power and toughness that your creature might be able to then block, or maybe not even trade. Maybe you get to win that fight instead of trading during that fight. And that could be potentially useful. I think these cards have shown that they are better in standard than they are in an eternal format like Pauper. It's okay, but if you're going to do these minus effects, I think you want it to be more than 2. At least from the toughness side. When you're doing the power side, we just talked about Humbling Elder. Actually, Humbling Elder, that might do 3. -3 attack. Is that right? Or is it just 2? It's 2. So -2 power is generally okay. But if you're trying to actually kill this thing, I think you need to do a little bit more than -2. You really want that -3. Disfigure, though, solid card, good cube card, good card to just have around. And this one is out of standard right now. Stab is in standard right now, though. I'm almost positive. Yeah, it was in Foundation, so it's from Foundations. So Stab's going to be here for a good long time. But both of these cards are fine, and I will give this one, I think, just a straight up 3. Good card, but not good enough to see any real play, I imagine. What do we got next? It's Web Weaver Changeling. 3 and double green for a 3/5 shapeshifter with Changeling, as you might have guessed, which means this card is every creature type. It also has Reach, and when this creature enters, if there are 3 or more creature cards in your graveyard, you gain 5 life. All right. So you could probably be dreaming up a couple of ideas of where this might go or what this might synergize with. The easiest one is something like Dredge. Hey, you're already putting a bunch of creatures in your graveyard to begin with. How about a creature that gains you a bunch of life when it comes into play because you've already been doing that? Yeah, you could. Are there more impactful creatures that you can play for 3 and double green or 5 mana generally? Yeah, there are. We'll go back to the tried and true thing that I always seem to talk about now is if you see a 5 mana green creature, is it better than Avenging Hunter? And this one is decidedly not. 3/5 with Reach is not nearly as good as a 5/4 with Trample that also gives you the initiative. So that's making for a really tough hill to climb for a card like this to see play. It does have Changeling, though, so if you are playing an Elves deck or a Fairies deck or something that really cares about the number of a single creature type that you are playing, this works, but I don't think it's worth the 5 mana to get it on the table, especially when that second ability is probably not going to trigger much at all unless you are a deck that is specifically milling itself or sacrificing creatures to put them in the yard. And even then, I don't think just because you get 5 life off this guy, it makes it some kind of sideboard staple. We have so many other great ways of gaining life in green in the sideboard, whether it's Pulse of Marasa or Weather the Storm. You just have so many better, more varied options or options that work in more varied circumstances than Webweaver Changeling. So you'll end up playing those instead. I'll give this thing a 2.5, I suppose. And the Changeling does help it, but it's still not a very good card. Alchemist's Apprentice, 1 and a blue for a 1/1 human wizard. Sacrifice this creature to draw a card. That's, not too bad. Think about another 2 mana creature that sacrifices itself to do something, and you'll potentially be thinking of Sakura Tribe Elder. Steve, good old Steve there, also available in Pauper. But, this is a 2 mana 1/1 that also just sits there and blocks a creature from the opponent and then sacrifices itself. This one ramps you. Is ramping you better than a drawn card? Probably, but sometimes the drawn card is way better, especially later in the game. So this is a creature that will always be somewhat relevant because it can always draw you a card. It's a 2 mana cantrip at that point. That's okay. that's better than a different 2-mana 1/1 that you could play. If you play Steve on turn 8 or something, okay, great, you can ramp yourself again. Did you really need that mana? Probably not, but you're always going to be happy about drawing another card. Still, though, you're paying 2 mana for a 1/1. That never feels that great. Steve isn't even played all that much in Pauper these days, so it's not like that's an amazing comparison. Maybe a slightly better comparison, and I mentioned it earlier, is that Ilvoy Galeblade, which is a 1 mana. This is a 1 mana 1/1, and it's got Flash and Flying, which is better. You have to pay 2 and sack this guy to draw the card, but he can kind of do what the Alchemist's Apprentice does. I think you'll find that you'll want to play the Galeblade more just because it has an established deck that can go into with the Fairies deck, being a non-fairy to make your of 1 mines work, being a flash flyer that can also help to get your ninjas on the board. There's a number of reasons you'd want to play Ilvoy Galeblade in that deck and potentially other decks. And Alchemist's Apprentice, I think, is just a little too normal. It's a little too weak here, like not having any other sort of evasion. And while we did mention the Steve comparison, and I think sometimes it does compare decently well to Sakura Tribe Elder, there's just the bigger problem is there's just not really a deck for this that I can think of. And like maybe a deck that can keep looping a creature back and you can keep drawing cards off it, I suppose. Like maybe some kind of Esper thing where you're flashing in the Omen of the Dead, getting this back, playing this, using your core Skyfisher to either pick up this guy, or not pick up this guy, but to pick up your Omen of the Dead so you can then play your Omen of the Dead again once you've sacrificed this guy. Maybe you can kind of loop that. That feels really unnecessary when you can draw a lot of other cards in Orzhov Blade without having to do this or even Splash Blue. I mean, if you want to Splash Blue, you should probably just play the Cryogen Relic, right? Fun card, and I like the art, but I don't think it's much more than fun. So I will give this thing a 2.6. The Shattered States Era. We've gotten a decent amount of Kamigawa this time, or at least talked about Kamigawa a lot this episode. It's 4 and a red for an Enchantment Saga. As the saga enters, and after your draw step, you add a lore counter. Chapter 1, gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap it gains haste until end of turn. Classic threaten effect. Chapter 2, creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. Okay. And Chapter 3, exile this saga and return it to the battlefield transformed under your control. And what does it transform into? The Nameless Conqueror, which is a 3/3 with trample and haste. All right, that's a lot of stuff. And I do like a card. I like sagas generally because whatever mana you pay for them, and this is a lot of mana to pay for 5 mana for all these effects, but you are getting a lot of effects. It's not exactly card advantage. It's not exactly giving you a second copy of the card in the same way that something like Flashback does on some cards. But what it is giving you is turn over turn value. And I do appreciate that. Now, how much is any of this value really worth? 5 mana for a threaten effect is too much mana. That's more than you ever really want to pay. You'll see 4 mana threaten effects that are okay. The 3 mana threaten effects are the ones that are played a little bit more. And there aren't a whole lot of threaten effects that show up in Pauper, to my knowledge. I don't know if that's because there just aren't a whole lot of common threaten effects, or if the ones that are there just aren't good enough to really deserve play in this format. But 5 mana for that effect, not amazing, and that's going to be the first effect that you get. Hey, I paid my 5 mana, and this is all I get is a threaten effect. Well, you have to wait till your next turn before you get more. And the second effect you get, creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. That's fine, but again, you can get that effect for way cheaper than 5. I still don't think these 2 chapters together are worth 5 mana. So, does chapter 3 really get us much? And yes and no. Getting the creature, I do like these Kamigawa sagas that will transform themselves into creatures. We do see the Modern Age get played in Pauper, as I mentioned earlier. You'll see a couple other ones that do okay. We saw some really good ones that are not Pauper legal back in standard days. The Kimono Faces Kakazan is a really good one. But here's the problem. I've spent 5 mana, and now I've waited 2 more turns. And at the beginning of that third turn, I guess, this thing now flips over, and it's a 3/3 with trample and haste. If I had 5 mana, if you have 5 mana, let's assume that's turn 5. You could potentially get it out faster, but generally you're paying your 5 mana on turn 5. And now I'm waiting a couple extra turns, and this thing finally flips over on turn 7, and it's a 3/3 with trample and haste on turn 7. It has trample, but what's it trampling over? What is the opponent already has a much bigger creature, or they have a ton of other creatures? Is this really getting you something of value at that point? Did this all pay off? And I'm not sure it did. The best mode on here, I think, is just the first chapter of the Threaten effect. And again, I think you can just get that effect for cheaper than 5 mana. And even if you could, you don't play that. It doesn't get played in the format. There's just better things you can do with your mana than that kind of effect. I'd say threaten effects are a little bit more fun in Commander because you have 3 other opponents that are all playing potentially big creatures, so you have more targets to pick out with a threaten effect. In 1v1, I just don't find that to be all that useful. It is cool when you can take your opponent's biggest creature and use it against them, and I don't know, potentially have a fling that can sacrifice it and do even more damage to them like that. I get it. It is fun. I've made commander decks that use threaten effects pretty nicely. But again, I just don't think that opportunity comes through as much in Pauper. There are a handful of Pauper decks that play big creatures that you can still threaten. Like, you can't threaten a Bogle. It's got hexproof. So you're talking about like mono white heroic. You can grab unless they've found a way to give a protection from red. You've got Monstertron, I suppose, can grab you a big creature or potentially. Maybe the mono blue terror deck, but you're not really going to play this on. You're not going to target terror with this because terror has the ward too. So are you paying 7 mana for that effect? I don't think you are. You could grab their Cryptic Serpent for sure. And there still are some decks that will play the Gurmag Angler, but most of what you see in Pauper are a bunch of tiny little creatures, 1/1s, 1/2s, 2/3s, and something like the core Skyfisher, 2/1s for Refurbished Familiar. And there's just not really a reason to use a threaten effect on that. You're paying 5 mana to get a 2/2 for 1 turn? Nah, that's okay. We've talked about this card for quite a bit, and I think just overall it's disappointing in every chapter and every part of it for the mana cost. So I can't in good conscience give it a good score. This is one that when I am sifting through my bulk, I find copies of this and I go, I wish you were good because I like the idea of you, but you're just not. Let's go ahead and give this thing a 2.4. Convincing Mirage, 1 and a blue for enchantment aura that enchants a land. As this aura enters, you choose a basic land type, and enchanted land is the chosen type. I do like, like is the strong word. I don't know if I like these, but I do prefer these types of auras that will change the land into a type. Like, it not in addition to its other types. Like, this is, hey, your mountain is now a plains. Deal with it. Or in this seems like halfway decent tech against one of those indestructible lands, indestructible dual lands, or any dual lands really. Like, hey, you're tapped for 2 different colors. No, you don't. Now you're just a mountain. Deal with it. That's kind of fun. And this is probably more often than not used with land walk abilities. So you're able to say, hey, I'm in blue. I've got a bunch of merfolk with island walk on it. I'm going to change one of your forests into an island, and now I can swing in with all my guys, and you can't do much of anything about it. Yeah, okay. This often just ends up being a pretty dead card, though. There aren't as many land walk abilities happening these days. It's something that's been at least semi-retired, if not completely retired, by Wizards. So I wouldn't really expect to see a whole lot of new land walk tech for the Pauper format. And I don't think most of the creatures that do have land walk abilities are all that powerful to begin with. They usually are just 1/1s or 2/2s that can, okay, they can swing in, they can chip out a little bit of damage, but they're not really doing a heck of a lot. It's a little bit sad. But this card is fine. It does what it does. I know there's, what's the difference between this and Spreading Seas? Oh, it's just this can only turn something into an island, but you do cantrip off it. So yeah, I like this a lot better than I like Convincing Mirage. But if you're in a deck that specifically, maybe you can turn one of your opponent's islands into a forest or something, and that's a way of screwing them over from being able to use that counterspell on you. I don't know. It's not great. Not great. I will give this thing a 2.1. Hey, oh, wow. We were just talking about this. The Modern Age. All right. 1 and a blue for an Enchantment Saga. As the saga enters, and after your draw step, you add a lore counter. On chapters 1 and 2, they're the same. Draw a card, then discard a card. So you get to loot. And then on turn 3, you exile the saga and return it to the battlefield transformed under your control. That's so weird. It transforms into Vector Glider, which is a 2/3 flying enchantment creature spirit. So, hey, another spirit that the Kitsune Riftwalker can stop. The Modern Age is pretty good. We've seen this in a handful of decks to give you just a little bit of card advantage. We've seen this be played in something like Fairies. It's a little slow in Fairies, but it is pretty nice to be able to play something like this and loot a couple of times. This turns into a flyer. You can swing in with that flyer. You can flip in. You can ninjutsu in a ninja, bring this back to your hand, play the Modern Age again, and get more of that card selection as you go. That's a cool thing you can do, if not, a particularly powerful thing. Because again, it is a little slow. You are spending 2 mana to loot once, and then the next turn you get to loot for free. That's cool. But it is taking you a number of turns to get to that 2/3 flyer, and by then maybe you are already getting kind of blown out. I love the Modern Age though. I think this is a pretty sweet little card, and I've used it in. Have I used it in Pauper? I don't know if I've actually used it in Pauper. I've used it in some standard decks when this was still legal in standard, and I think the card's neat. I really do. I think I'm forgetting something. I feel like there's some kind of deck out there. Does something like Familiars play this? I don't think that it does. I don't think that it does. But there certainly are some decks in Pauper that will at least try a copy or two of this in the deck. And maybe a little before it was better than it currently is, but I do love the Modern Age, and I'm going to give this thing a 4.3. I think this is good value. 2 mana to loot twice and then get a 2/3 flyer. That, unlike the Shattered States era, this feels like you're getting a good deal. It's just that you're getting that good deal after a couple of turns. You have to wait a little bit, but once all this stuff happens, you go, wow, that was, I don't mind that. I don't mind paying 2 mana for all that. I think I still do kind of mind paying 5 mana for everything the Shattered States era does. So Modern Age, much better card. Is that our last one of the day? I think this is our last official one of the day. It's Herald of the Fair, 2 and a white for a 3/2 human When this creature enters, target creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn. That is bad. I think that's bad. 3 mana for a 3/2, already not so good. This not putting a counter on the creature when it enters is crazy. This is for 3 mana. Ugh, awful. I guess it is 3 power. So okay, but ugh, no. No, I don't really like this at all. I'm gonna give this a straight up 2. And then I think we gotta give ourselves a bonus card here just to wash the taste out of my mouth. What can we get? Oh, we get a Sky Shroud Falcon. 1 and a white for a 1/1 bird with flying and vigilance. Oh, this card's just so normal. Man, look at how hard this Stronghold art goes. I mean, the 7th edition art is fine, and normally I do like 7th edition arts better than the previous cards that they're based on, but this Stronghold art, god damn. You get the lightning lighting up the bird. Like, that's good job. Good job. Yeah, 2 mana 1/1 is not amazing, even when it flies, even when it has vigilance. You could put this in White Weenie, I guess, but it does feel like a real waste when you've got much better cards like Rafine's Informant that you could play in that kind of a deck. You could put this in Mono White Heroic, but you just have other creatures that can gain flying when they have auras attached to them, or they just get so big that they don't care. You could put this in Bogles, I guess, but it's not a Bogle, so it's very easily targeted and killed by your opponent. The Vigilance is nice. The Vigilance is nice, I guess. But because it has Vigilance, you're probably not putting it in any sort of deck with ninjas, because the nice part about ninjas is, well, the part about ninjas is that they will bounce the creature back to your hand. So you're not getting any extra value from the Vigilance here, because then the creature's off the board. Who cares if it was untapped when it happened? And that's just, any one of those individually, you just go, well, that's not the deck you play it in. And I agree, but I think you just kind of go down the line and you go, wait a minute, it doesn't go in any of these decks. So what deck does it go into? And I don't think there's a good answer for that. So Sky Shroud Falcon, you're fun. I like your art. But I'm going to give you like a 2.4, I guess. That's all for today. We will catch you on the next episode of Common Knowledge. Be there. See ya.